on an exciting topic, the breathtaking beauty of Islamic architecture. This seminar is brought to you by YPS, STEM Matters, and the University of Lincoln. And I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Amira Elnokaly, who is an Associate Professor of Sustainable Architecture at the University of Lincoln. Amira is also a Senior Fellow of the Higher Education Academy and Chartered Registered Architect in Egypt since 1998 and a member of the Architects Egyptian Association. Amira is the UK Higher Education Representative at the Royal Institute of British Architects, East Midlands Regional Council Board since 2012, and a board member of the International Building Performance Simulation Association, England. Amira's expertise is within the sustainable built environment with almost 2 decades of teaching and learning experience and sustainable architecture consultancy in the Middle East and in the UK. For her contribution to the Sustainable Development Agenda in Egypt and role in empowering women in science and technology, Amira was awarded the prestigious Egypt's Presidential Award for Significant Expatriates of Egypt Abroad as one of the most influential and impactful women in science and technology in 2017. Amira is a member of the RIBA East Midlands Education Committee. She completed a PhD in 2005 at the University of Nottingham, looking at environmental behavior and energy efficiency of lightweight structures. She's also interested in environmental sustainability agenda, and in 2008 received an honorary award from the UNESCO Environmental Education and Outreach Program for spreading environmental awareness and global warming impact in the schools of Alexandria, Egypt. Amira is an active researcher with much research funding from various funding councils, Technology Strategy Board, UK, Innovate UK, Knowledge Transfer Partnership, British Council, and Newton Musharraf funding. In 2016, Amira was awarded the University of Lincoln Teaching Excellence Award in recognition of her outstanding teaching and learning. Amira's research focuses on ecological and environmentally sustainability within the built environment, cultural heritage, smart and eco-cities. She has published widely in high impact peer-reviewed journals. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to hand over and introduce Dr. Amira Elnokaly to talk about the breathtaking beauty of Islamic architecture.
Thank you very much, Professor Waqar. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm humbled. I didn't expect you to read my whole biographies just to be online on the school website, but thank you very much.
I wish I had all these prizes.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me to be one of your speakers today. It's great to be with you all today, and I'm really sorry for the technical problems. I'm not a very big Zoom member, always use Teams and other platforms. So thank you for having me. As you've just mentioned, Waqar, I'll be talking about breathtaking beauty of Islamic architecture. And as some of you might have realized, I've done a lot of work in Egypt. So my background, I'm originally Egyptian, and I was taught in the School of Architecture, Cairo University. I have to say that Islamic architecture is not my major, but it's something which is very close to my heart. As a student of architecture in Cairo University, I was taught Islamic architecture in Fatimid, Cairo. We will go every session to be there in the midst of those beauty of mosques. Cairo known as the city of the 1,000 minarets, for those of you who don't know that. But we were taught architecture. People think of Egypt as the pyramids and pharaonic architecture, but we have a wealth of various types of architecture and eras. We have Roman, Greek, Islamic and Fatimid, Cairo, and we have Coptic. So everything was taught on field. And I'm going to be delivering this out of the love that I think I've learned a lot from my professor there. We had a professor who was very keen that everything on site. So most of what put it today was what I had to recall of what we were taught, really. So to start this, I thought the best thing to do is to start by defining what Islamic architecture is. And it comprises of the architecture styles of buildings which are associated with Islam. It encompasses both secular and religious styles from the early history of Islam, which was dominant from the 7th century onwards to the present day. It's very extremely rich in decorative items in Islamic architecture, as you will see today. There's a lot of geometry, balance, patterns, calligraphy, which is the Islamic or Arabic writing, is a very big part of the features and vocabularies of this type of architecture. It's also drawn on the emphasis, architects at that time drew on the emphasis of the oneness of God, which is called Tawheed in Islam, which is visually rendered through inherently false balance between unity and order in the geometry reciprocal. So you will be, I think it's one of the most important things that we seek to understand and realize as we look at Islamic architecture. There are various types of Islamic architecture. There is the mosque, which is the place of worship, house. There's the madrasa, which means school in Arabic. There's the hammam, which is the hot bath. And a lot of North African countries have a lot of hammams. And it's part of the big sort of masterpieces of architecture, but we will not be talking about this today. The citadels, we will be looking at one of them today, and mausoleum or the maqam, which is a tomb or a monument for a highly regarded imam or person in Islam. There are various types, because we're talking about the architecture, although I'll not be dwelling a lot about plans and perspectives in terms of what mosques entail. However, you can see from the various typologies that it's always axial. So the dominance of an axis is very important. And the dome is something you can see. The minarets, except in the Chinese sort of mosques. So you will find that the mosque architecture or how the plans of those in Iran and Central Asia, the one top left, Anatolia, use of massive central domes as in Antalya and Spain and this part of the world. The Indian subcontinent, top right, Southeast Asia and central pyramid roof construction. Then we have Spain and North Africa, as you see the bottom of the photos. There are certain things or vocabularies in the mosque elements and features that we need to agree or understand before we start. There is the minaret at the top there, where the mu'adhin used to at the time go on the top of here to call for prayers. There's the dome, which usually is in the central sort of Quran where the prayers are being undertaken. You have the keel arches, which is the pointed arch, which gives the flavor of various type of architecture. In Islamic architecture, you always find either the horseshoe sort of arch, or you will find the pointed arch as in these. The sahan, where you find the water, the main water feature for ablution, and we will be talking about this. And muqarnas is those details of architecture that you will find within most of the domes and inside different parts of the Islamic architecture. Mashrabiya is, again, is something we'll talk about, which are the Latin windows, and the dikka, where the royal will stand on top and speak to the people. So we'll start by Mashrabiya, which is a very interesting piece of architecture. And you can see that it's the windows in various parts of the mosque. Interesting enough, as Waqar mentioned at the start, I am into sustainable architecture, and the use of those in hot climates is very high, because what happens is it increases the velocity of air as it gets into the space, cooling down the mosques or the madrasa or the citadel. And it's usually one of the iconic features of architecture. There's the mihrab, which it's a semicircular niche most of the time, indicating the qibla, which is the place towards which all Muslims do their prayers. And you can see the beauty of the architecture within, and how it's crafted with a lot of geometry. You can see the balance and the rhythm and the symmetry as well, which are key features in most of mosque design or those heritage mosque design in many parts of the world. The sahan, or the square, or this courtyard in the middle of mosques, is another key feature of the architecture. What you see here is sahan of the Sultan Hassan, one of the case studies we'll be looking at today, and the Blue Mosque up there. And it's the courtyard, which is combined with the ablution area. And the features are here. It includes various things. You can see the calligraphy. You can see the mashrabiya windows. You can see this sort of linings, which is one dark colored brick layer and then another lighter color, which is one of the features of Islamic architecture. The minarets, and there are various types of minarets. This here shows 6 of them, but there are much more, over a dozen of them. These are the minarets in Egypt, in one of the mosques we will look at today, where the adhan is called. You can see the difference between pointed minarets and the others, which have a more of a rounded top, as you can see here. These are the different type of minarets. One of the easiest to spot out is this Ottoman minaret with its pointed sort of top, or the spiral minaret as in the Mutawakkil Mosque and Ibn Khaldun in Egypt. So the dome is another big feature of Islamic architecture. And the dome you see here is of the Mamluk style, next to the Mamluk style minarets. And you can see that it's different in terms of the finishing of how this is crafted. And this is made of arabesque with floral patterns, representing the underlying order and unity of nature with a great deal of accuracy, flower and trees. And this one here, those colorful ones, are some of the most, are mostly found in Iran. So these are the sort of Persian domes that you see in Iran and Tehran. These are the Cairo, sort of more Mamluk Cairo, where we had all our classes, as I've mentioned earlier. Another interesting part, which you see here, is the minbar. And this is the place where the imam will go on the top, and we will be speaking to the people and delivering his khutbah, or to the people in when they come for prayers. The one on the right there is Morocco, in Marrakesh, sort of minbar. It's in Qutbiyya Mosque, between, I think it's 1125 and 1130, and you can see the wood and ivory, which is crafted within all through. The other one we see here is the minbar and qibla of the Sultan Hassan Mosque that we will be talking about in a bit. I'm just going to very quickly go through these, just because these are just to show the different vocabularies, so we understand what we are delivering. This is the place for delivering for the royal message, as we've seen in the earlier plan, which is a top sort of platform where the royals or imams will go on the top and speak to the people. There are other various vocabularies and features in Islamic architecture which are key and are found on most of the mosques and citadels at the time. We have the muqarnas, which you'd see up there, which is the patterns in which embedded up there, but it's these vaults and domes, and we call them muqarnas. It's a highly defined sort of vocabulary, which is quite difficult to create as an architectural ornament. And you have the main hall, on top of which will be the dome, as in down here. And this is the qibla, and the structure that spans a space towards it will be the archways as you go into this. One of the most important features of Islamic architecture is the Islamic writing or the Arabic writing that we will see in most of the mosques across the world, actually. Wherever these pieces of architecture, Islamic architecture, you will see that calligraphy is a very, very important feature. And like other Islamic decoration, it's closely linked to geometry, and it's written within a geometrical sort of symmetry that is interesting. And it's not usually the type of Arabic writing that we will write. It's got more depth into it. There are other sort of very important elements that are associated with Islamic architecture, as in light and water. Light adds this dynamic quality to a place, and it adds to the sacracy of the place. And it extends the patterns to various levels. Some of the architectural vocabulary, like the muqarnas and other parts of it, you will not be able to digest the beauty and the sophistication of the architecture if you can't see the play of light, or how this combination of light and shade and shadow plays a massive feature of that of those Islamic pieces of architecture. So that part there was just to set the scene for what we have in these case studies, just so that we are talking about the same terminologies. What I wanted to do is just try and show you some of the beautiful pieces of architecture we have in different parts of the world. This is Sultan Ahmed Mosque, which is also known as the Blue Mosque in Istanbul in Turkey, which was constructed between 1609 and 1616. And it's one of the masterpieces of Ottoman mosques. And as you can see, the pointed minarets here, which just straight away reflects on the type of architecture. Also the dome, which is a pressed dome, which again reflects the Ottoman approach to the architecture pieces. This is a World Heritage UNESCO mosque, and most of the case studies, or all actually, that I'm presented today are all under UNESCO heritage. This is another view of the mosque. What we see here is the interior of Sultan Ahmed, or the Blue Mosque in Istanbul. It's highly decorative, as you can see. You can see the calligraphy on the top, and it all reflects the beauty and the sophistication of this architecture. You see the muqarnas on the side, right on the complete left side, and the calligraphy in different type. Every decorative art we see in front of us, whether it's ceramics, illuminated manuscripts, carvings, or weavings, or even the type of carpets we have within, regardless of their scales, are all adhered to aerial archetypes we discussed in decoration. And hence you can see, even though there's a lot of decoration and it's extremely rich, but there is this sense of consistency. So you can see it's visually consistent, and it's also balanced. When we look at all these different ones, you see that the variation always comes from regional influences. So this is being Turkey, you will see the variation of color scheme, what you have in Iran or in Spain. Every time you will see that there is an input from the regional of the space. But it's important to understand that the layer to the basic structure of those ornaments and the foundations of balance and unity remains within all of them. So as these principles supplement the doctrine of monotheism experimentally, of this unity within. So this is another view of the main prayer hall, and you can see the beauty of the space. Geometric patterns in Sultan Ahmed represent order, repetition, balance, symmetry, and continuous generation of pattern. one of the most important vocabularies of Islamic architecture and features is that continuous generation of pattern. You will find that there is a pattern that is repeated within for that sort of balance and rhythm. And it is something which is pieces, as we see here within the dome and in the other place, you will see that there's a technique within. Pieces of colored stone are cut and fitted in the marble, a very sophisticated technique as per the desired design, whether it is within the geometry or within the calligraphy. So this has been employed extensively in the various architecture pieces that we are looking at today. This is an interior view of the mosque from the other side, and you can see the white marble and the space, and the idea is to reflect the heat within at one point when it's hot in the day. The other case study I wanted to show you, and although this was constructed some 200 years after the other one, which finished in 1619, and it's in Cairo and not in Istanbul, but you can see the impact of the Ottoman architecture, because at that time in Egypt, we have finished of the Muayyad and the other sort of architecture style, and there was an impact of the Ottoman architecture, and you can see that clearly within the pointed minarets. So this mosque was constructed by Muhammad Ali Pasha in between 1830 and 1848. It took a long time to be constructed, over 18 years, and it stands as a gigantic sort of mosque within the center of Cairo. Again, it's a UNESCO heritage site, and it holds a great pride to the people in the place. This is another view from the outside of the citadel of Muhammad Ali Mosque. The interesting thing about the Muhammad Ali Mosque, which we see here, this is the whole sort of site plan of the Muhammad Ali Mosque. So it was constructed as part of the citadel, and it was constructed as part of various mosques and other sort of, you find the Mosque of Sulaiman Pasha here. There's another very interesting Mosque de Cathedra and a Musée de la Police. So it becomes a part, it's sort of a tourist site where it becomes part of various architecture buildings, but we'll only be looking at the Muhammad Ali Mosque. This, what you see here, is the courtyard, or the Sahn, as one of the key architecture features we discussed at the start, and the clock tower, which is quite an interesting piece of architecture. And you can see the impact of it being 200 years later from the other one we showed earlier in Turkey. It's interesting, again, the white color, which reflects the heat of the sun, and it's made out of alabaster covered courtyard. So the whole courtyard is covered with alabaster. And as we go closer, you will see that the architecture vocabulary has changed, and there is an impact, or there is a merge between Roman and Greek architecture and other sort of styles. And again, this is due to the region. The dome that we see at the top, again, colors, calligraphy, muqarnas, which we see at the side. There is a rich architecture feature that we can only see in Islamic architecture. Similar to the one outside, although different in color, is the alabaster covered interior, and we can still see that maybe the sunlight and the sunshine and the weather, the impact of weather conditions have changed the color of the outside, but that's what you get inside, which is a more subtle alabaster look. One of the most attractive features of architecture within this interesting building is mosque, is the richness of its mimbar and the qibla, sort of mihrab. And you can see the alabaster and the feature, the geometric features within, and the balance. The three the three ridged archways you have here with the two columns. Again, one of the key architecture features of Islamic architecture. This is the tomb within the Muallims in the Muhammad Ali Mosque. The other sort of interesting architecture piece that I wanted to show you today or present is the Hamra in Granada, Spain. I was very lucky to go and visit it in 2017, and it was amazing to learn about something as an architecture student and just come to see it face to face and to understand all those lovely things that we spoke about in my history classes, and then come to see those features. El Hamra is a big citadel in Granada in Spain, and it's full of those interesting features and vocabularies. And it's also considered the only medieval palace in the world which has arrived intact to the present day. Most of the architecture, the color, the calligraphy are all intact today. It was originally constructed as a small fortress in 889. However, it was renovated and built mid-11th century by Emir Muhammad ibn al-Ahmar of Granada, who built this construct palace and walls. It was then constructed into a royal palace, and this is what we see today in the same sort of setting by Yusuf I in 1333. The plan of the space, and just to show you, the reason I'm showing you the plan, and I know this by no means is something which is extremely technical, but it's to show that the citadel has various sort of parts and places. You have the mixwar, which is this part of there. There's the palace of the ambassadors, the place of the lions in the middle there with the water, and the outside gardens. What we have here is the Tower of Justice, which is the original entrance gate to Al Hamra, as built in 1333 or 1340, late 1340s by Yusuf I, when it was finally, the construction was finished, although there are a number of other entrances that people use today. And what we see here is the Court of Lions in Al Hamra. One of the things which are quite important to address and understand, even though we see here the Court of Lions, and this wasn't something that's used a lot in Islamic architecture. Because of the creation of living things that move, that is humans and animals, is considered to be in the realm of God. So Islam discourages usually the artist from producing such figures through art. Nevertheless, of course, certain amount of figural art can be found in Islamic architecture, and as one of them, you will find the Lions court that we see here, and it is the main feature of water. And as we will talk in a minute, water is a very important feature of Islamic architecture. So again, it's the Court of Lions, as it's called, and you can see the patterns within. There's a mixture, as originally said. Usually the city or the country within which these pieces of architecture are constructed is impacted by the place, its identity, and the region itself, but also by the climate, where you will see the pitched roof as we see here. And this is the main garden design, and the water, where you can see the balance and the symmetry that we have within the main courtyard. It's interesting again to look at the sophistication of the calligraphy here. You can see that every one of those in Al Hamra, it's different. Part of them are like Quran surahs or du'as, and part of it is also poetry, which is quite interesting and attractive. And it was quite difficult when you go there and try to look at the walls and see what you can read really out of it, because it's quite. There's a very, very high craftsman that is sought to create and reflect the sort of calligraphy, and also light and play with various sort of aspects within this. Material analysis on the Stockholm scene in the Court of Lines and on those spaces is a combination of gypsum, powdered marble, and eggshells. And these additives were included to make the gypsum both harden and more reflective, so that it reflects light, providing greater luminosity to the colors applied, which are no longer extant because the color has changed within a lot. So I think that from this you can see various elements. You can see the muqarnas, you can see various things like the repetition of the patterns, how you can have natural elements and you have geometry displayed and repeated within. So this sort of Islamic art, one never finds a useless or superfluous ornament. Every ornament arises quietly and naturally from the surface decorated, and it's subtle, and it resonates from its features. There's a lot of scholars who are interested in the Islamic and architecture, in the ornament and decoration of Islamic architecture, and various other things. And that's because of the very high sort of sophistication within the techniques used. This is illustrated by Ricardus Ibelizas from Spain in 1850, and it is one of the windows and openings. I'll show you some of the images of this later, but as you can see, what he tried to represent was shade, shadow, the openings and how the light goes within, and how you can see the transition of light within the space, which is something that is very important in Islamic architecture and has always been thought well by the architects and those delivering. The starry ceilings, which is an intricate cedar wood, part of them, there are various starry ceilings, 2 or 3 within the Hamra citadel, and the intricate cedar wood ceiling has exacting measurements. It's extremely difficult to put into place how it consists of those multicolored. There is around 8,017 multicolored panels within those, and it's decorated sophisticatedly. But some of them are 8-pointed and some of them are 16-pointed stars within the mother of pearls. And you can see the sophistication of the muqarnas at the bottom end of the domes, which is really breathtaking. And with the lights coming in from the top, it is sort of, I think it's one of those masterpieces that you will not find in any other place than in the Hamra in Spain. The other very important aspect is calligraphy. This is the window of Minarets in the Hamra citadel, and the decoration has linked buildings and objects from all over the Islamic world. From Spain to China to Indonesia, there are certain features that you will only find within those spaces. But calligraphy is very important because of its role in recording the word of God. A lot of it has to do with Islamic surahs. And it's considered one of the most important parts of Islamic arts. Some scholars only research around the Islamic calligraphy and the type of how it's written. You will see that this one here is very different than the one we've seen earlier in Sultan Hassan. So nearly all Islamic buildings have some type of surface inscription of the stone, stucco or the marble, the mosaic, or as we saw in the alabaster in Sultan in the Muhammad Ali Mosque. Sorry, Sultan Hassan will still see, but they're all very different. And the inscription might be a verse from the Quran, lines of poetry, or names. One of the calligraphies that you will find all over the Hamra Mosque is this specific one, which says "Wala ghalib illallah," which means there is no victor but God. And it's interesting because this is put in various spaces. Sometimes it's written as we see here, sometimes it's written within the diagonal geometric spaces, but it's seen all over the building. "Wala ghalib illallah," there is no victor but God. other parts of the calligraphy. And as I said earlier, I think the interesting thing is the value of those writing in Islamic architecture. It's extremely highly valued by the people and scholars and the artists themselves. That's the top of the wooden citadel. You can see the geometry here, and how you can move from something which is floral and very organic to something which is highly geometrical and is repeated with a specific geometry, and you will always see the heart at the middle. What you can see here, again, is the calligraphy. Some of these have geometric patterns, but some of them have calligraphy written in the center of the three-arched arch that we see underneath the muqarnas. I'm not sure if you can see my pointer, but I'm trying to point at it, so I hope it's clear. So geometry in Islamic artists developed geometric patterns to a degree of complexity and sophistication which was previously unknown to those architecture pieces. They were one of the start of those patterns. These patterns exemplify the Islamic interest in repetition, as I said earlier. Repetition, balance, unity, and symmetry. And it's the idea of continuous generation of pattern, which is quite complicated and sophisticated as well. And what we see here is the ceiling of the Hall of Ambassadors that we've seen earlier in the plans. These are the water inside the Hamra citadel, but what is important to realize that water is not just in this building or in one of the mosques. It's something that you will always see in every piece of Islamic architecture. It's also associated with being a lot of those mosques are in hot climates. So the water from courtyards and pools and fountains will help in evaporative cooling and making the space sort of cooler. However, it also is a very important feature in terms of purity in Islam, in terms of cleanliness and a place to generate access within this building, but it's also a part of being pure and given the importance of ablution in Islam. Again, light, something we've discussed earlier. You've seen the image which was created by the Spanish artist, and these were the spaces which was taken from. You can see here the balance about light, shade, and shadow. And in Muslim countries and in Islam, this was a very important feature. It's having the light coming within. It's purifying of the soul. And it's the dynamics that the light and shade of shadow present in a place. How you visualize the muqarnas, for example, with shade and shadow. It's a very, very different feature. Another beauty, and you can see the sides, you can see the color of the geometry of arabesque below. Another case study that I wanted to show you very quickly, and I'm aware of time, is Sultan Hassan and Rifari mosques in Cairo, which are a bigger part of a complex in the middle of Cairo. It's important to understand that since it's a part of a complex, it has the madrasa, and this is why I wanted to show this study, because it's not just the mosque, but it also had the madrasas, which you have two madrasas at the side, which is number 12 here. You have the mausoleum, which of Sultan Hassan, or the tomb, which is at the end of the whole of the building, and you'll see some images of that. The entrance with the main space and the dikkas are here, and you have the water features in the center. Again, similar to the other examples, we've seen the entrance of the Sultan Hassan. You've got the calligraphy and the place. The entrance is amazing. You can see the muqarnas, the featured colored rows of bricks, one dark and one light. Usually it's brown and lighter beige color, which we call the ablaq, which is another important feature of architecture. You can see it here closer, the ablaq. Sorry. This is the vestibule chamber with dome and the muqarnas, which you find at this entrance, just at the entrance of the vault. And you can see the ablaq stone as well, which is much clearer in the side of the building here. The sahan and the interior of the mosque within the place. And again, the light feature, so it's not only the natural light you get from outside and from the courtyard, and you can see the mashrabiyas at the side of the building, but it's also those beautiful light features that are hanged within. This is the main water feature and the space for ablution within. The mimbar and qibla within the mihrab. So the qibla will be going towards the mihrab, and you see the colors, which are they're beautiful and they are attractive, something you don't see within all the architecture around you. You see here that the geometry has become a little bit different, of course, because of the time of this construction was much further than the others. The calligraphy, again, is very geometrical, very different than the one in Hamra, which was more organic. And these are the side of the school, which are here. Usually, most of those quarters were always assembled by a school. So you find the mosque and you find the madrasa, where they teach scholars about everyday life and also about Islam and Quran, where they learn. And you can see the mashrabiyya. So there are various features that are repeated within. And this is the end of the plan, where you find the mausoleum of chamber of the Sultan Hassan at the end of the mosque. It's interesting to look at the calligraphy around the building, and the mashrabiyya is on top, but you will see that the calligraphy here and the style is different from the ones before. The interior of the dome and the muqarnas. So it's important to realize the pattern of the vocabularies that were transferred across the world. We've seen Turkey, we've seen Spain. This is in Cairo. So the vocabularies were transformed across the Mediterranean and across other parts of the world. We'll always find the dome. You will see the symmetry. You will find the calligraphy, and you will find the muqarnas, and highly and sophisticated geometry and ornaments within the whole thing. I know this is not the best images from dream time, but it was very interesting and important for me to show you part of the doors as well. So this is the main door for the entrance, as we see, and you can see again the repetition, the geometry, and the calligraphy, not just as you get in and with the ablaq, but also in the door, the exterior door itself. How am I doing with time?
Yeah.
Okay.
You could continue.
Just five more minutes, hopefully. So the last one I wanted to show you today, and it's another breathtaking piece of architecture, and we all know Taj Mahal, which is one of the seven wonders of the world, the new seven wonders of the world. But again, it's a beautiful piece of architecture in a very, very different part of the world. And you will still find the main features: the balance, the symmetry, the minarets, the domes, and the calligraphy, all of which might be different to what we've seen. But at the end of the day, it's something that reflects the same parts of architecture. I would like to share a video, and I'm not sure if you can see my video or not.
Try playing it.
I'm trying. Can you still see the presentation, or you can see something else now?
We can see the presentation, the slide, Taj Mahal.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing this, And I'll share something, another screen, if you don't mind. Just let me, sorry. Hopefully it's starting. Sorry, it's just taking a while to load. I don't know why. Okay. I'll need to go back and share. How can I share?
Back there again. I think while we're waiting, it's good that you just shown the Taj Mahal, because we've got some people watching us on live stream Facebook from India.
Okay.
They'll be happy to see the Taj Mahal.
Okay, so can you see my Safari screen now?
Yes.
Can you see the video?
Yes, we can see and hear as well.
Okay, so you can see it here. Brilliant. Here we go. I thought just to stop me talking all the time to share this with you, Katim. So the Taj Mahal was constructed by the Sultan at that time for his wife, who he lost when she was giving birth to their 14th child. And she was the love of his life. And he did the mosque, or he constructed the mosque in her memory. But again, you can see the calligraphy, which is at the side of the building, and the ornaments, the muqarnas, which is much more subtle. Okay, what do you think of that? Sorry, I just thought this will be interesting to share as part of this presentation. Again, the Taj Mahal, of course, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the video is created by the UNESCO World Heritage, and it's an interesting sort of it's an extraordinary, I think it's a beautiful World Heritage Site. It's a building that is iconic and stands out from all architecture spaces. And you can see that in each and every architecture buildings, or each and every building that I presented you today, everyone have its own uniqueness. Everyone is different, although they all share similar vocabularies and similar sort of architecture features that are dominant within. Maybe the color or style and approach are different, but these are all impacted by the region and place. So Islamic architecture explores through geometry the ideals of perfection, unity, balance, and order, creating the rhythm and harmony in spaces, embodying them. Geometry is key within all the Islamic architecture features, and it exists in nature. It's the minutest particle inhabiting it. In the structure of leaves and in petals, in soil and water. This whole idea of geometry and balance is key. And the more we look in the micro sort of organism, and you look under a microscope, you will see that geometry plays a key feature. So buildings in this tradition are not just experiments in aesthetics, but meticulously planned spaces that celebrate unity, inequality, and enchant the viewer into a meditative exploration, nudging one to take a step forward. In all those beautiful images, you can see the muqarnas, you can see the top of the domes, you can see the mihrab, the qiblas, and other important features, the water, the shade and shadows and light, beautiful sort of features that are reflected within those pieces of architecture. There are various sort of books you can look at. I'm sorry I had to put this together, even though it's not my major, as I said, but it's something that's very close to my heart. I hope it wasn't too much and it was what you wanted to see. Some of the good books that you can look at is Islamic Art and Architecture, Color, Light. Again, as I said, color, light, and wonders in Islamic art as water features. Mamluk Architecture, which you will find a lot in Egypt, being the city of the Thousand Citadel, Islamic Art and Architecture. That's all from me. The image is from a dome in Iran. Iran has the most beautiful pieces of Islamic architecture. Unfortunately, due to time, I didn't have time to show you any of those architecture project or buildings, but I did show you some in the examples, and you can see that their domes are always different. So thank you very much. Shukran lakum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amira, for an excellent presentation.
Can I show you this? This is a beautiful book that you can find online for anyone who's interested. Sorry, Waqar. And it's very cheap. I bought it as a present for me when lockdown started. It came up handy. I didn't know that I was going to present this. So it ended up being good. It's called Ornament and Decoration in Islamic Architecture by Dominic Levenot and Gerard de George.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we'll pass that on to the people who are interested. Yes, we have some questions, but I think before I go on and read the question that people have typed, I would just like to sort of ask you that, you know, you've shown a lot of, there's the Blue Mosque and the Taj Mahal and all these different mosques in Egypt. I was quite fortunate to sort of visit last year in Abu Dhabi. You didn't actually show the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, which is a beautiful mosque. You know, even if you look at it in terms of the decoration, you know, the carpet itself in the main hall, the marble that they've used specifically from Italy and different parts of the world. How come you didn't mention that, or what would you like to comment on that particular design? Or
well, thank you very much for the question. I totally agree with you. There are masterpieces of our Islamic architecture, the beautiful mosques in various parts of the world. I know the one you're referring to. I think I'm also, one of my research interests is heritage and culture, and you will find that I'm very much a little bit biased towards heritage and older sort of mosques. I know when I spoke to Waqar, I told him you'll be surprised that I don't have anything from contemporary Islamic architecture, but it doesn't mean that there isn't beautiful one. There is a lot of breathtaking pieces of architecture. I'll say it's time, but also say that maybe the ones I have presented are the ones that, even though I haven't seen, for example, the Taj Mahal, I haven't been there myself, but every other one I've been there myself and they've touched my heart. So I wanted to share that with you. So sorry if I haven't, but although and I think you've mentioned something very important, that in Islamic architecture, especially in mosques, they give a lot of attention for things like the carpets, the patterns within, what you see in the walls, how the lights are, even not the electric lights are put up, and all these beautiful sort of, what do you call, chandeliers. So yeah, you're right. Sorry,
okay.
Next time.
Yeah, let me just ask these questions what people have. Someone asked, considering there were not too many tools and accuracy sort of instruments at the time, how did the architects of that era manage to construct such magnificent projects to such perfection and detail?
Thank you very much. Well, I think it only reflects about the geniuses of the constructors and the architects, and also the skill set. It's not just the architect, but it's the skills of the local people who were able to craft such beautiful pieces of it. If you just look at one of those muqarnas and think of the amount of time that you will have with your manual tools, there wasn't those, you know, high innovative sort of techniques you have today. It only reflects on the genius, skilled labor. Okay. It wasn't easy, and it takes, some of the mosques we see today are constructed within 12 months, 9 months. Those took 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
There's Abdullah who's asked, he's visited the Blue Mosque and it's truly magnificent. Granada, hopefully next on the list. What is the most significant Islamic architecture in the UK?
Oh, thank you. Interesting. Well, I think I was fascinated to see the London Mosque. I can't say it mirrors anything of what we've seen today. I was lucky enough to see the one in Dublin as well. It's an Islamic center. It's a very interesting, inspiring piece of architecture. But again, it's more subtle. You don't have the very high decorative elements. There's the new Cambridge Mosque as well. I didn't get to see it myself, but I've read about it and I've seen the images. So I don't think we have many, or I recall many, but these are the ones that comes to mind.
Okay. There's another question. How does the architecture of mosque compare to that of churches, especially the lighting?
Well, this is a very important question, because what we can see is that a lot of the features as well, for example, if we think of the Hagia Sophia in Turkey, it was a church before, and now it become a mosque. So a lot of the features are learned. Light, as I did mention, is an important feature in our Islamic architecture, but it's also in other sort of religions. And when I was taught history of architecture, we did Coptic Egypt. And you will see that a lot of those features are also reflected in other religions. At the end of the day, I think purity and light and all these things are things that we share with other religions.
Okay. There's a question here from Samir Iqbal from the USA. Can you talk briefly about the mathematical marvel of Penrose tilings?
The mathematical
marvel of Penrose tilings?
Well, I have to admit that I don't know much about this. As I said earlier, I'm not one that goes into, it's not my major or that sort of thing. But there is a lot of research done over how those features, especially those that are based on flowers and more organic terms, you can see how they work the balance, because balance is and repetition is very important in Islamic architecture, and these have to be done mathematically to be able to have the right sort of ornament within the space. So there was a lot of mathematical calculations in this book that I was looking at, Ornament and Decorative Islamic Architecture. They talk a lot about this, but it's not something that I know a lot about, so I can't really tell you how the mathematical.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
So maybe someone from mathematics. I'll leave this to Professor Wakar.
Yeah.
What is here?
Yeah, there's another question. What was the inspiration for Islamic architecture to start using calligraphy, geometric shapes, and mosaics and things like that?
Well, I don't know really what was the thing that started it, but as I told you, one of the most important features of Islamic architecture, calligraphy, because in Islam, the first thing that was delivered, and this is not something I'm making up, I've read it in some of the papers, which was taught to our Prophet, is Iqra, which is read. So reading and writing is one of the key aspects of Islam. You have to be educated, you need to know how to read. And calligraphy in mosques was used as a platform for people to learn and read about from pieces of Quran. There were some of the key features, like, for example, I told you what I was fascinated in Hamra Mosque, in Hamra Palace, going around to see why is it Wala Ghalib illallah in every part. You go around it, you'll find Wala Ghalib illallah in various, and in different calligraphies. And I think it was a reflection as well of the time. There was war, there was a lot of people coming through, and they were always this reflection of God will always win. It will, this will be the end of things, that victory is only to God. So calligraphy is very important in our Islamic architecture. It is a way of communication between you and this is a sacred space. So ornaments was another feature because it reflected the uniqueness of the place. And as every other piece of architecture, you'll find that the higher the architecture of a place, the economy rise, the politics rise. So when Islam came in, they had to, I believe there was this competition of how will you stand to the Roman and Greek architecture and what came before you, to have those masterpieces of architecture that reflects identity, that reflects religion, and shows the strength. So the stronger the architecture, and at that time, countries were ruled by religion. It wasn't like what we have now. So it's all religious sort of stuff. So the religion and the places of worship became very important to stand out. And that's why ornaments and sophistication and showing the genius of the architect was important to reflect.
Okay. Yeah, we have a question from a youngster here, I think. Is the Taj Mahal a mosque? Is it a mosque?
Yeah.
Taj Mahal is a mosque, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
But we also had a space for living at the side of it where the, I have to go and read this before, that the king, at the last 8 years of his life, his son left him there because he was missing his wife very much. So he could overlook the mosque or the place where his wife is buried at the side there, at the end of the space. So he would overlook it all the time. And what they did is they generated this place. So as you enter, you will be able to see the mausoleum of the queen.
Okay. There's another question here, someone from Coventry. Do you think Islamic architecture today lacks the distinctive designs and styles from different regions?
Sorry, what's the question again?
Do you think Islamic architecture today lacks the distinctive designs and styles from different regions? I don't know whether he means in the UK or somewhere, but maybe Nasser, Ilyas, if you're there, if you could unmute and ask the question, rephrase it. Are you there, Nasser?
So,
okay, we could come back to that then.
So if he means the different, that today is different, I think the contemporary Islamic architecture is very different. And there are some beautiful mosques being constructed in different parts of the world. I think there is a lack of Islamic architecture in what I showed you. There was madrasa, there was, for example, in complexes in Fatimid Cairo, you will see the houses, but these are not the type of construction that we do today. So you'll only find it in mosques. But vocabularies and aspects have changed with the impact, again, of the region and the styles we have. So some of the mosques you have in Dubai or in other parts of the world, you will not think that this is a mosque, but it is.
Now, if you go to Medina, to the Prophet ﷺ's mosque, Masjid Nabawi, if we look at, you were showing a bit of the different styles of minarets. These are kind of pointed minarets. So these are more sort of the Ottoman, the Turkish style, aren't they?
Yes.
That built. And the dome as well, and the green dome.
Yes, yes. Well, the Ottoman was extremely distinctive, really, that you can see that it is extremely pointy at the top. So anywhere you find this extremely pointy one, even today you say, well, it's got an Ottoman impact. It is this Ottoman architecture. Very different than what we see, for example, in Cairo. And there's some of them which are Ottoman architecture because there was the influence again, but you will see the other pointy ones. Or for example, if you've been to Cairo, you'll see thousands of different types of minarets. It depends on the era, really.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Anyone who wants to ask a question?
There's another one in this chat.
What was the one?
How has futuristic construction affected Islamic architecture?
If I get your question right, Yasmin, thank you for the question. I think futuristic construction has affected all types of architecture. How much do we have this Islamic architecture today? I can't tell you this because I'm not a historian myself, but what some people might call futuristic construction has had an impact on everything. But one of the beauties about architecture is that, as I said at the beginning, every piece of architecture is impacted by the region where it is and the style and the country, the climate and others. These futuristic sort of construction have definitely impacted the type of architecture. I remember once, as maybe in mid-90s, I was surprised that in the middle of Cairo there was this spaceship building coming up, and I was always wondering, what is this building going to end up being? And it ended up being a mosque. This spaceship had 2 minarets coming up, and it became a mosque, and that was their thought of maybe they're going to fly to space, and it was a joke. But you know, you see, you find this any parts of the world, you know, it's different. But there, yeah, it has impacted. It depends again on the client and on the people who really want to revisit that sort of thing or to learn from this architecture. That's why I said I was a little bit biased and I wanted to show heritage sort of architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Repeated structures. Samir Iqbal.
I think this is related to that mathematical question. Okay, where he asked about, Samir, I think asked, well, can you talk briefly about the mathematical marvel of Penrose's tiling?
I have to say that there is a very, I have a friend who spoke to me, who does a lot of very interesting architecture features. You can Google him. I hope he hears me today. He's a contemporary architect who his name is Walid Arafa, and he I should have shown this as a very interesting piece of architecture today, because he had the contemporary architecture, and it's inspiring how he used it. But one of the big things of what he likes, or what he has in his architecture, is understanding the mathematics of space. And he have this beautiful mosque that is constructed. I have to make sure that I got the right name of the mosque. He's got a very nice mosque constructed in the middle of Cairo. And again, what he uses a lot of mathematics and geometry. I'm really sometimes bad with no names. Walid Mosque. Let me check, and I'll tell you. You can always. His Bassoona Mosque. So the Bassoona Mosque in Egypt. And the interesting thing, when I discussed with him, he said that he's always fascinated by the math and the repetition in Islamic architecture. And that's what he used. He always looks at the geometry and start to repeat it in various parts. He also looks at contemporary residence, and he tried to make it a good understanding of Islamic architecture and reflect into this. So I think if you look at this, I'll put it in the chat. Bassoona Mosque, Walid Arafa, geometry and math. I think he will know better than me in that, in Islamic architecture. I've actually invited him. He's a world leading architect now. He's won a lot of prizes. He's doing the Egyptian house in Paris today. He won the award to design that. And I was lucky enough, when he came here, we invited him actually at Lincoln at the School of Math and Physics last year. And he was talking about all the geometries and all that beautiful stuff. So please go and check the architect and the mosque.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Amira. From my side, I think we've gone through the questions. I'm done. Maybe I'll pass over to Professor Ahmed, who could ask some questions, and then maybe have the closing remarks.
If you allow me,
Yep.
Professor Wakar.
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yep, fantastic talk, Dr. Elnokaly. So my question, which I was asking, was, there's a fantastic area called quasi-crystals. So I'm an engineer, and a few years ago, a chemist got a Nobel Prize on crystals that don't repeat themselves, but there is a periodicity. And his inspiration was Islamic art. And he said that Penrose tiling is a concept in mathematics where they don't repeat like we would know things repeat, but there is still a symmetry between them. And many people are working in chemistry, taking inspiration from Islamic art. So that was where I thought if we could, but of course, it's a little bit more chemistry related concept. But thank you very much for this talk.
Thank you very much. I think what you're saying is spot on. It's beautiful. When I first started this, as I told you, it's something that's fascinating me. And I said I would do this, ornament and decoration. It's a book I got before. It had nothing to do with this at all. But when we started lockdown, I said, okay, that's what I want to do. Because I also wanted to know more about geometry, about this idea of the alif, which is the A, and how it became one of the alif in Arabic, and how it becomes one of the main features of geometry repetition in Islamic architecture. But then I thought this would be very boring and extremely technical for the people. I don't know much myself, but it was something I wanted to explore. But I will look into this quasi architecture, and I think it's what you're saying is beautiful. Again, if you look at patterns within the book, it shows directly what you see. It looks like a geometric sort of when we were taking chemistry, small ones, and how everyone is connected to the other. It's just, there's a lot to learn, and it depends on what we're interested in. So thank you.
Can I ask, what inspired you to get into architecture? When did you first wanted to, study this field? Was it when you were very young, and who inspired you?
Okay, it's a very difficult question, and you'll be surprised. I always wanted to be a medical doctor, like my parents. Of course, if your both parents are doctor, they will want you to be the doctor, because there's no doctor but being a doctor anyway. So I didn't do architecture, but I said I'll meet them in the middle. So I went to Cairo University engineering to study biomedical engineering. It was a new course, and they only took the top 10 of 1,000 students, and I was very clever. I got into biomedical engineering. So surprise, surprise, I was going to be a biomedical engineer. And then in the first year, I went with my friends who were studying architecture, and I was fascinated by my professor who actually taught me Islamic architecture. He was our history professor who took us to the site, but he was also teaching visual studies. And he was talking about balance and order in that first year. So I decided I'll study architecture, that this is me, this is what I wanted to do. So I transferred from biomedical engineering to architecture. This is how I got into architecture, the real truth. His name is Professor Ali Gabr. So anyway, that's how I got into architecture.
And what advice would you give to youngsters that want to get into this field?
I think it's a great field. Architecture it's not a profession, it's a way of life, it's everything. It's those boring architects who stand and take photos of buildings with no people in, and people is like, wow, no one is standing there. Yeah, I'm looking at the building. So it is very important. It shapes who we are. We shape our buildings, and later they shape us. The environments we create around us is where you live. It have an impact on who we are, who we grow to, and our ethics. There is a big ethical stance. Like the question Yasmin asked about what is, future construction. I think it's not iconic architecture. It's how we create things that have an impact. And what we build today is the heritage of tomorrow. So it's a great profession. Hopefully I'm not biased.
I don't have any more questions. I don't know if Dr. Nasser's got any further questions.
No, I think we're done. Maybe Dr. Amira, if you want to say the concluding remarks or final remarks before we wrap up, if there's anything.
Well, first, thank you very much for inviting me. I've truly enjoyed it. I was a little bit nervous that I will talk about something that I haven't presented to my students before. But as I said, it's something very close to my heart. I think Islamic architecture is marvelous. We need to do more in that stand. It's very important we teach it and we talk about it and we understand it. There's a beauty in it where there's a lot of aspects that touch the soul, this uniqueness, the symbolism within it. The various architecture features were quite sophisticated, which reflects uniqueness, symmetry, and real beauty that we realize. We always, I think those who are interested in Islamic architecture or people from the Middle East or Muslims themselves are always fascinated by more contemporary or Western architecture or other aspects. And I would say that if like people like me or others who come from a similar background, we need to celebrate that and make it known to others. What is there in Islamic architecture? Because some people will say, well, really, is there Islamic architecture? So we have to maybe change that.
Okay.
Thank you, Amira. That was a beautiful lecture. I really enjoyed it. I didn't know very much about this topic, but I think we would like to invite you back in 2021 to give some more on this topic. Maybe a series of lectures on Islamic architecture.
That will be nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. I hope I wasn't a boring presenter, but it was lovely seeing you all, or virtually.
No, it was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.